our St. John's Swim League Stroke and Turn training. My name is Kristen Blon and I am the league president for this year. I'm glad to see so many new faces and especially folks that are new to stroke and turn. I wanted to share the agenda with you for what we're planning on doing. We're going to introduce the stroke and turn training team that we have. We're going to talk about the importance of what a stroke and turn judge is. And then we're going to run through each of the strokes, watch a quick video about them, talk about a little bit about each stroke, and then we're going to teach you how to fill out your DQ slip that you have in front of you. And then we'll move on to each of the strokes in that manner. And then the very end, we'll talk about background checks, and then we'll do a question and answer session. So that's kind of what the plan is for the evening. First of all, I introduce myself, Kristen Blon. We have our amazing stroke and turn team over here. We have Gary Sowell, and he is from Bartram Springs. We have Craig Wilcox, and he is from the JCP Porpoises. And we have Kim Turney, and she's also from the JCP Porpoises. So we've got a great team here tonight that's going to lead you through, and we each have different roles. My role is to give you a little bit of information about what the stroke and turn judge does. So you are basically, as a stroke and turn judge, you are first of all not the bad guy. We want to make sure that that's very clear, and you'll be hearing our team say that over and over again. Your role is going to be to observe the swimmers to make sure that they are doing the strokes appropriately, and that's what you're going to be learning tonight. You are going to be filling out that DQ slip that you have in front of us, and then after you fill out that DQ slip, you will give that to a runner who will take that to the head meet officer or official, the HMO. The HMO will review it, they'll approve it, or if they have any questions, they'll come back to you, ask you questions, and then that process is turned over to the computer operator who then enters it into the system. And then after it's been entered into the system, it is given to the coaches, and the coaches are then able to meet with the kids, the swimmers, and say, hey, we really need to, when we're doing breaststroke, do 2 hand touches, or whatever that situation is. The goal of having stroke and turn officials is that by the time we get to chance, all of these kids know how to swim these strokes efficiently and correctly. So we're not the bad guys, we're the teachers. We're teaching them how to make sure that they're doing these strokes correctly. So we wanted to make that very clear. At this point, I am going to turn it over to our freestyle folks. Next slide. Yeah. Freestyle. So we're going to do the video first, and then I believe Craig is going to talk about freestyle, and Kim will lead us through the DQ slip.
Swimming the freestyle allows the swimmer to swim in any style. However, the most common stroke used is the front crawl or Australian crawl. In competition, swimmers are subject to limited restrictions on their stroke.
When swimming the freestyle, some part of the swimmer must break the surface of the water throughout the race, except at the first 15 meters after the start or after the turn. It is the responsibility of the stroke judge to observe that the swimmer is not submerged after the 15-meter mark, and that the swimmer does not pull on the lane lines or push off the bottom of the pool.
Upon completion of each lane, the swimmer must touch the wall. The swimmer may turn in any manner desired, as long as contact is made with the wall at the end of each length of the race. If the swimmer misses the wall while turning, it is permissible that the swimmer go back and touch the wall, either by reaching back with the hand or sculling back to touch with the feet, and then continue on with the race. If the swimmer misses the wall and fails to return for the touch, it is a violation, and the swimmer is disqualified.
The swimmer has finished the race when any part of their person touches the wall after completing the prescribed distance. The swimmer is not allowed to touch the wall while being totally submerged at the finish. This is a violation.
Reviewing the rules of the freestyle, it is important to remember some part of the swimmer must break the surface of the water, except at the first 15 meters after the start or after each turn. The swimmer may turn in any manner. If the swimmer fails to touch the wall at the turn, they may go back to make the touch. The swimmer is not allowed to pull on the lane lines or push off the bottom of the pool.
Couple of important terms in there that you're going to hear throughout all of these. Turn in any manner. That is literally what it means. We don't care if they splash up and down and do somersaults and circles and stuff, as long as they fulfill the turn requirements. Some of the strokes might be two-hand touches. Some of them might be you just gotta touch the wall. And it doesn't say you gotta touch with your hand, it says, okay, maybe your knee will work, or your foot, that kind of thing. Freestyle is one of those. It doesn't matter. You watch, you say, did they hit the wall? Yep, good, done. They fulfilled that one. Now, in summer league, we call it the fun league, okay? Because that's what all our kids are supposed to be doing, is having good fun. We watch, we make sure that they do that. And we try our best to not only make sure that they do the stroke the right way, and everybody does the stroke the right way, and ends up being okay with it and stuff, but you'll notice that you don't get to see a lot of turns, because there's just not a lot of long events in summer league swim. Okay, the longest one is what, 200 yards, I think, for one of the relays? And so you've got different people doing those, so you might see one turn if you're on the turn end. So there's really not a whole lot to it. The video also answers, sort of, one of my favorite questions to ask all of you, okay? And this one's pretty easy. Swimmers going up towards the turn, right? They flip, they do their flip turn, they just decide, okay, I'm stopping and going backwards. And so they stop, they flip, they start heading out. Now, raise your hand if you know, or that if it's acceptable and not a violation for them to skull backwards and touch the wall, or if it's close enough, reach back and touch the wall. Yes? Anybody? Yes? Yeah, they answered it. They said, yeah, you can do that. They can go halfway down. They can go 3/4 of the way down. They can go within 1 inch of the start end of the pool, or the turn end, depending on where they're doing the turn, right? As long as they don't touch the next wall. They suddenly realize, or they're most likely their coach got to them, said, go back and touch the wall, go back! And so they stop and go, uh-oh, I didn't touch that wall, so then they swim all the way back, touch the wall, and then come all the way down. Obviously that's a killer, but you get it timed that way, you don't get DQ'd. So that's an important distinction, that there are some of these strokes, freestyle especially, is pretty wild, wild west. In the freestyle event, and when I mean that, I'm talking about only freestyle. There's no other strokes being swum like in a relay or an IM or IM medley relay, anything else like that. We don't care how they get down the lane. They can do one of these things, spin and swim. They can do whatever they want. They can swim underwater. We don't care, right? But, other people will sometimes do butterfly. Fully legal. It doesn't specify that people have to do that crawl that you saw here. A lot of people you'll see will do the butterfly because it might be a better stroke for them. And when you weigh it all out, a lot of times are very similar between butterfly and freestyle. So don't be weirded out when you see somebody suddenly coming up and, reaching and doing a butterfly for the freestyle event only. Like I said, we'll get to relays and we'll talk about some of the rules on that. The last thing is, and like Kristen said, we are not the bad guys. Absolutely not. What we do is we fill out our slips. The slips go to the admin official. Usually it's your computer person you call or your computer operator. And they might get entered into the computer, they might not. Eventually, all of the ones for the teams, for each team, get packaged up and get sent to the coach. And the coach goes through them and says, cool, this is all right. You know, I can look at him and I can say, yeah, I saw Bobby do that. Yeah, Susie didn't quite kick or anything. And that's the teaching part. The coaches, good coaches, already know this stuff. They're putting their kids in to get the experience, which is exactly why summer swim exists. Get the kids in the water, get them experienced. Okay? It's not hard. Question?
I had a question about the finish. I never heard before you can't finish underwater, but I guess I've never seen anybody do it.
I gotta verify it, but you don't see it very often. They changed the rules for backstroke recently, where you can submerge at the end on the finish. Used to be you couldn't, and it was one of the hardest calls that a stroke and turn judge could ever make, because you have to look, when did they touch? When did their feet come under the water? When were they fully submerged? You know, what do you look at first?
Sticking out.
Right, what do you look at first? You know, that kind of thing. And as it turns out, it's pretty clear cut. You watch their toes, it's usually the last thing that goes in, and then you go look at their hands. Now, I'll admit, there's that quarter of a second that it takes you to move your eyes from their toes to their hands. And in that quarter second, they could be touching the wall.
In our league, we don't call
No, you're only human.
I never heard.
So it doesn't happen very often. It slows you down. So, okay, up now, pull out your DQ slips, and we have the fabulous Kim here to go through exactly how to send it, fill it out, and what to write on the slip and what not to write on the slip.
Yes, so, when you see them in a V, you have them doubled on a sheet right now, they'll be split for you. First thing you want to do when you're watching your races is actually just make your notes on your heat sheet. So whether it's writing, you know, their heat and lane, or actually trying to fill it in the little tiny spaces with the heat sheet, write your notes there. When you have a second, then you fill this out. Trying to fill this out in the middle of a race, then you're no longer watching to see what's happening. So that's first. Second, then you'll see at the top, it wants you to put the event, heat, lane, the swimmer name, and then their team abbreviation that'll be in the heat. So that's all easy. Freestyle, this whole sheet doesn't apply for all of the events. It just applies mainly for like IM or the medley relay. For each individual race, you're just looking for that one little section. And so that kind of helps you go, oh, okay, I'm really not watching for that many things. Freestyle is really nice and easy. You can see there's like one bullet, and that's basically, they didn't touch the wall, because they can get up and down the pool however they want. Some of these miscellaneous ones could potentially apply, like they could decide that they're gonna jump up and down off the bottom of the pool or something like that, but technically they can stop if they need to. They just can't push themselves off to go again. If they need to fix their goggles, same thing. If they need to rest on the lane road, same thing. They just can't push to keep going, because then it's a violation. I don't know how often that would happen where they would know to kind of inch back off and then float to then start. So it probably would be a DQ, but freestyle's pretty simple, so it's a good one to start with today. And then after you've put any marks down that you need for that particular one, the judge line is yours at the bottom, and then once we do our background checks, you get a badge, and it'll have a number, and you write your badge number on there. Every so often the runner will come by and grab them. Every once in a while, whether it's the HMO, whoever may come and ask you like, hey, I don't understand the marks you made on your slip, can you explain them to me? That's when the notes on your heat sheet are important. So it doesn't really mean a lot for freestyle, but in other strokes you need to do that too. Something else just to keep in mind, keep this as clean as possible. We don't need to make extra notes on here, because the person who sees this is a person who's putting it in the computer and they're checking a box. They're not able to put in any extraneous tips. And so I was that person last year who wrote all sorts of notes on there, and it means nothing. Put that on your heat sheet. So, yeah, freestyle is easy. Next.
The backstroke is basically as the name implies. The swimmer shall push off on their back and continue swimming on the back throughout the race.
judge shall observe that the swimmer remains on the back. The swimmer is allowed to kick in any manner during the backstroke. Some part of the swimmer must break the surface of the water throughout the race, except after the start and after every turn, where the swimmer can be submerged for not more than 15 meters. From the side of the pool, the stroke judge shall observe that the head breaks the surface of the water before or at the 15-meter mark. Some part of the swimmer must then break the surface of the water until the next turn. This swimmer breaks the surface of the water with her head at the 15-meter mark and is legal. In this example, the swimmer breaks the surface of the water beyond the 15-meter mark and is not legal. This swimmer should be disqualified.
When turning at the end of each length, some part of the swimmer must touch the wall. During the turn, the shoulders may be turned past vertical towards the breast, after which a continuous single or double arm pull can be used to initiate the turn. Once the body has left the position on the back, the swimmer shall immediately initiate the turn. The swimmer must return to the position on the back or side past vertical towards the back upon leaving the wall. In plainer language, the swimmer can rotate toward the breast and take a single or double arm pull and continue kicking as long as it is part of the execution of the turn. They may take one single or double arm pull in any turn. They may not take more, even if they find that they are too far from the wall. Once the hand or hands complete the pull, then the swimmer must execute the turn. The swimmer can make contact with the lane line,
She gets caught up on that lane line toward the end. Watch this, right up against this lane line right here.
but not pull on it as an assist. The swimmer may kick while turning as long as that kick is part of the execution of the turn. The swimmer may not kick into the wall to make up distance before turning. This is not a legal turn. After turning past vertical towards the breast, the swimmer has to immediately initiate the turn. This swimmer is not performing a legal turn. It is a legal turn when the swimmer touches the wall while on their back, then turns in any manner as long as they are at or past vertical towards the back when their feet leave the wall. It is legal when a swimmer begins to rotate past vertical towards the breast but touches the wall with some part of the body before executing the turn. The swimmer may then turn in any manner as long as they are at or past vertical toward their back when the feet leave the wall. A swimmer may not scull back to the wall if they turn too early and miss touching the wall. The backstroke turn can be a difficult turn to judge. Remember, if you are unsure of the call, the swimmer always gets the benefit of the doubt. When observing the turn, the official at the end of the pool should stand over the lane. Once the swimmer passes vertical toward the breast, you should observe that all actions of the swimmer are associated with the execution of the turn. Also observe that the swimmer is past vertical towards the back when leaving the wall. The official should watch the swimmer leave the wall and then check to see that the swimmer is past vertical toward the back. The key to judging the backstroke turn is to observe the whole body. The arm pull initiates the turn and must be followed by the execution of the turn.
When finishing the backstroke race, the swimmer must touch the wall while on the back. The race is finished when any part of the body touches the wall at the end of the prescribed distance. When observing the swimmer at the finish, make sure they do not completely submerge prior to the touch. Reviewing the backstroke, remember these important points. The swimmer must swim on the back. After the start and after each turn, the head must break the surface at or before the 15-meter mark. The swimmer is permitted to kick in any manner. At the turn, the swimmer must touch the wall with any part of the body. Can turn towards the breast while initiating the turn with a single or double arm pull. Must be at
things to note about backstroke. So there's a lot of detail in there. Generally speaking, backstroke is freestyle on the back. Okay, so the actual stroke itself is not complicated. As long as they stay on their back, mostly on their back. They can be close to vertical, but as long as they are more on their back than on their front, that's completely fine. So they can swim almost sideways if they really need to. That really only comes into account, for the most part, on turns, that you're gonna have to watch a little closer on the turn in. But outside of that, they can flail sideways, you know, as long as they stay on their back. You know, a lot of the younger swimmers, the new swimmers that are trying to figure it out, you'll see a lot of flailing. You'll see a lot of hitting the lane line with their arms sometimes. Hitting the lane line is completely fine. Rowdy Gaines talking about, she's right up on that lane line. Didn't matter, she was hitting the lane line. But then there was another swimmer you noticed pulling on the lane line. The easiest way to see someone pulling on the lane line is if you see separation between the little flotation devices that are on that string. If you see them spinning, they're most likely just hitting. But if you see a physical separation between those, that's the key where they're actually pulling on that lane line, which is illegal in any stroke, not just backstroke. But backstroke is more often the one where they do have interaction because they can't see backwards, right? Unless they have a lot of experience with it, they can tend to actually hit that lane line. So the couple things, and we're going to talk about a few of these things in some of these videos that are either A, outdated, or B, we just don't do in our league. We already kind of discussed the fully submerged at the end of the race. Actually, that's old from the video. So that's USA Swimming already changed that rule maybe 2 years ago, something like that. So you can actually be fully submerged now. You don't see the funky foot being stuck up in the air at the end of the race like a lot of kids make sure they do. And that's another reason why we don't call it on the freestyle in our league either. It's just something that's really hard for the stroke and turn judge to actually notice, and that's also a nuance that the coaches will kind of stick on sometimes. So yeah, we don't call it fully submerged whether it's on backstroke or freestyle. On the start, as long as they're facing backwards on their start, completely legal. Okay, they go backwards. The 15-meter mark that's mentioned there several times, we have yards pools, we all have most of us have the little markers on there, but that's again something we do not call in our league. There's not consistency when it comes to the brand of the lane lines that every team uses. Sometimes you can actually buy lane lines that don't have that mark on them. Sometimes there will be, it's not the tightest, you know, so sometimes there's a little slack in there and it might be a little bit off. So bottom line, we don't call the 15-yard mark in our league. Most kids can't even challenge that 15-yard mark unless they're a pretty experienced swimmer. So you don't really normally have to worry about that. One thing that you may have noticed there, you'll see that more on, for instance, the breaststroke video, but we do not have officials that are trailing any of our swimmers. We only have 4 officials. So we don't have anybody on the side. Another thing with the 15-yard mark, you have to have an official up there for that to count, to be able to see that clearly. So we don't have somebody at the 15-yard mark. We don't have anybody trailing anything. The four stroke and turn officials are in their jurisdictions in their own quadrants, basically. So I'll explain that really quickly. So again, we have 4. The way we do it in our league, we have 2 from each team in the meet, and they're on opposite ends of the pool, diagonal from each other. So you have 1 from each team on each side, opposing each other. That way it's fair, you know, in case someone decides they want to try to cheat for their team. So your jurisdiction, let's just say it's a 6-lane pool because most of our pools in our league are 6 lanes. Champs will be different, likely, and then sometimes every now and then there'll be a pool that has 8 lanes. But you basically have 1/4, as a stroke and turn official, you have essentially 1/4 of that entire pool that's being used. So if you have a 6-lane pool, you may have lanes 1 through 3 on the start end. If you have lanes 1 through 3 on the start end, the place you stand is approximately the middle. So if it's 1 through 3, you're standing between 1 and 2, or 2 and 3. Okay? If you're on the opposite end of the pool, different 3, you're standing approximately in the middle there as well. So it's important for you to know to stand in approximately in the middle from a fairness perspective. Okay? So the benefit of the doubt always goes to the swimmer. Okay? That'll be mentioned many times here in the video. We'll mention it many times. So again, we're not here to penalize the kids. We're here to teach the kids. I like to think of us as teachers' aides. The coaches are the teachers, we're aiding the coaches. So we give the coaches our notes about the kids, the coaches use those to teach the kids. So again, try to think of it that way. We're not here to penalize them. We're not here to be the bad guys. We're here to help teach and train them. So your jurisdiction is that quarter and approximately in the middle because you need to be fair to all the swimmers in your jurisdiction. If you're standing on the far corner of the pool over here near 1 to 3, you can see lane 1 really well. You can't see lane 3 nearly as well as you can see lane 1, especially if it's a stroke where there's a lot of disturbance of the water, right? So you're not being fair to lane 1 because they're more likely to actually get DQ'd than lane 3. So that's why you're approximately in the middle so that you're fair to everybody. Another part of that is you're constantly moving your head from lane to lane. So you don't focus on one lane. And the ideal scenario is you're starting from one side, you can pick right, left, doesn't matter. You're standing across at the kids, and then you're starting over on the other side again. You don't sweep back and forth because then again, fairness, the person in the middle is going to get eyes more than the people on the outside, right? So 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, etc. So again, fairness to the kids. You're responsible for your quarter. If you see the kid do something once they're past halfway across the pool, not your jurisdiction, that's up to the person that's on the other end of the pool. Doesn't matter how egregious it is, let it go. Another thing is, you'll notice the officials in there raising their hands. That's a USA Swimming thing, and not our league. We don't do the raising of the hands. We just write as many notes as you can on your DQ or on your actual heat sheet, and then as little as possible, like Kim mentioned, on the DQ slip itself. Because if an HMO has a question, based on whatever's on here, you can just go back, because it's hard for you to remember. If you have, let's just say 12 DQs that you've already done, you don't remember every single one of those. You may remember some, but you can go back and really quickly see your notes and be able to say, yes, I remember that clearly. It was a left hand only touch. It wasn't left and right, it was left only, and the kid just kind of sat there until it was over. So very important to write as many notes as possible on your heat sheets and as little as possible on the DQ slips. So a couple things, the toes curled over the gutter. This is something we were actually talking about at the beginning here. So on the backstroke, it is a disqualification if their toes are curled over the gutter. But there are 2 different times when that can happen. There's before the whistle or before the buzzer, and there's after the buzzer. As a stroke and turn official, you are only responsible for after the buzzer. Whatever happens beforehand, that's up to the starter. If you happen to notice that the toes are curled, again curled, up is fine, curled is not. So if you happen to notice the toes curled before the buzzer, and the buzzer goes off, and the starter said nothing, that's not you. They let that go. If they corrected the swimmer, and then after the buzzer goes off, they jump back up there, that's the stroke and turn official's call. So again, you don't have to worry about it except for after the buzzer. Another thing that can sometimes be difficult to call, to notice the differentiation on backstroke is on the turn itself. So there's 2 main things that are going to happen, and we saw a lot of that here in the video, is the delay initiating turn versus the delay initiating arm pull. Sometimes it's really difficult to recognize what is what on that. Okay, so a couple things. So one, you notice it can be a single arm pull or a double arm pull, mentioned in the video. The double is not a 1, 2. The double is if an arm's already under the water and this one comes here, they pull. If there's 2 splashes, that's a disqualification. So it's just the 1 splash and the pull. So delay initiating, what they're going to do, again, is they're on their back until their turn, basically. Once they start to turn, they come over. It's continuous motion is what you're looking for. Once they come over, their arm is moving, their arm is moving, their arm is moving, and as soon as their arm stops moving, their head should start moving. Okay, so if they do this, and then they still kick into the wall, that is a disqualification. That is a delay initiating turn. Because the arm has already happened, right? So the arm pull has already happened. If they turn over and they put their arm out like Superman, that's delay initiating arm pull, right? Because they haven't started to pull with the arm. So arm pull is the arm itself. Delay initiating turn is after the arm. They should start moving. Sometimes if they're really far from the wall, really experienced swimmers, they may slow their arm down because they recognize that they need to do that turn once they get there, right? or you might even see them paint the fence. They just might do this. Again, those are more experienced swimmers. You probably won't see that very often, but continuous movement. They turn over, their arms moving, arms moving, arms moving, and the head is moving to do that turn. And then when they leave the wall, after they turn in any manner, they kick off the wall. They again must be more on their back than they are on their front. Okay, so they can't, it's happened several times where they'll push away from the wall on their stomach and then they'll flip over. That's a disqualification. They have to be more on their back as they're pushing away. Let's see. I think that's right. Anybody have any questions? Backstroke. Yes.
What if they kick off perpendicular? Not
Actually,
on their back,
yeah, I'm glad you
benefit
mentioned that.
out.
Because there's one way to try to differentiate that, and that's the shoulder blades. So if you're, let's just assume you're standing directly over top of them. If you can see one shoulder blade, then it's good. If you can see two shoulder blades, then they've gone past. So you kind of just think about it that way. You got a mark and a mark, basically. If they've turned enough that you can see both shoulder blades, then that's a disqualification. And if they're perfectly, vertical, not a disqualification. And again, if you have any doubt whatsoever, if you're 99.9% sure, just don't write it up. Benefit of the doubt goes to the swimmer. Again, we're not here to penalize them. We're not here to split those hairs. USA swimming officials are there to split hairs in those meets. But for these kids, it's about fun, it's about learning. So if you're not sure, that's it. Yeah.
So more or less, if they time their turn wrong, they're kind of, unless they have
Yeah.
they're kind of DQ.
Exactly. Which is again, that actually goes back to the teaching moments on how to use the backstroke flags.
Right.
So when they're in practice, figuring out their count after they go into the backstroke flag, and then doing the right number of strokes. But yes, yeah, something that they learn.
And just to confirm, when they're touching the wall, finish flipping over at the last second is a disqualification.
Correct. If they've done it before they touch the wall. Yep. And some come really close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the time, you don't see that too often on the finish, but on the turn, you can see that. And one thing to note on there, because I remember this being confusing to me in the meet the first time I saw it happen. If they turn over and they're really close to the wall, and they hit the wall with their hand instead of actually doing a flip, that's okay. That was actually shown in the video there as well. If they turn over and immediately hit that wall, as long as they leave on their back, they're good.
They just have to change their turn at that point. They, instead of doing a flip, they do a flop.
They just flop it backwards basically at that point. Yep. Yeah. So, all good? DQ slip.
Okay, so same as before, you make your notes on your lead sheet. You fill out your things at the top as you need, and then we're looking at number 2. Just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that now there's start, swim, turn, and finish. I just wanted to read real quick that a start is from the start of the race until the head breaks the surface. The swim is from the head breaking the surface until the beginning of the last stroke, starting the turn. The turn is the beginning of the last full stroke to the wall until the head breaks the surface when they leave. And then the finish is the beginning of the last full stroke into the wall to the touch at the end of the prescribed distance. So depending on where you see the violation, you would mark that based on then what it is that you observe. So we pretty much discussed all of those things that are there as far as shoulders being past vertical and looking for those shoulder blades. Toes being curled over the gutter. Toes above the wire is fine, but you can't curl them if they don't finish on their back. And then either delay initiating the pull or delaying the turn. And then some of these out here miscellaneous can apply again as far as the pulling on the lane rope, that's where that is. It's W down here under miscellaneous. So look at 7 and W. And then that's pretty much all for backstroke from the slip. Okay, all right. Next.
The breaststroke
responsibility begins as the swimmers enter the water at the start of the race. There is an important recent amendment to the rules that changes judging the start of the race and each turn.
First, we will address the arms. Previously, there had to be lateral separation of the hands before the butterfly kick could be taken. Under the new rule, a single butterfly kick may be completed at any time prior to the first breaststroke kick. These swimmers take more than one butterfly kick. This is not legal. On the initial pull at the starts and after each turn, the arms may be brought all the way back to the hip line. The head must break the surface of the water at or before the hands turned inward at the widest part of the second arm pull.
A legally swung breaststroke may look very different from swimmer to swimmer, but the one kick will always follow a single arm pull. Many breaststrokers have an undulating motion to their bodies when swimming. This is perfectly legal, as long as the swimmer is not using a downward butterfly kick during any part of the kick and is following the other rules of breaststroke. When officiating the breaststroke, you must watch the whole body, not just the pull or just the kick. From the beginning of the first stroke, after the start and each turn, the body shall be kept on the breast. Arms shall move simultaneously and in the same horizontal plane, without any alternating movement. This turn is not legal. The swimmer comes off the wall towards her back. The hands shall be pushed forward together from the breast, on, under, or over the water. The elbows shall be kept under the water, except for the last stroke at each turn, and at the finish. The hands shall be brought back on or under the surface of the water. The hand shall not be brought beyond the hip line, except during the first stroke after the start and each turn. Some part of the swimmer's head shall break the surface of the water during each cycle of one arm pull and one leg kick, in that order. All vertical and lateral movements of the legs shall be simultaneous. The feet must be turned outward during the propulsive part of the kick movement. A scissors, flutter, or downward butterfly kick is not permitted. The best position from which to observe the stroke is slightly behind the slowest swimmer while watching the whole body.
At the turn, the swimmer must touch the wall with both hands simultaneously. It is important that the official observe the touch carefully, because many swimmers touch the wall very quickly with both hands, and then one hand will immediately leave the wall. After observing the touch, watch the swimmer leave the wall, and then check to see that the proper body position has been attained.
The hands at the finish must also touch simultaneously. The hands do not have to be on the same plane. The hands can touch above, at, or below the waterline. The hands do not have to be on the same plane. One hand can touch above the water and the other below, as long as the touch is simultaneous. If the hands do not touch simultaneously, this is not legal and the swimmer should be disqualified. The head can be submerged after the last arm pull prior to the touch at the turn or the finish, provided it has broken the surface of the water at some point during any part of the last complete or incomplete stroke cycle. Reviewing the breaststroke, remember these important points. A single butterfly kick may be completed at any time prior to the first breaststroke kick. After that, a scissors, flutter, or downward kick is not permitted. The initial arm pull after the start and at each turn may be brought to the hip line. The head must break the surface of the water during each cycle of one arm pull and one leg kick, in that order. The hands must touch the wall simultaneously at each turn and at the finish. And remember, if you're not sure what you have observed, the benefit of the doubt always goes to the swimmer.
All right. The breaststroke. Like was mentioned in the video, this is probably the most difficult stroke to officiate and swim. So this is where, especially with the younger kids, you will probably see, or the new swimmers, you will probably see quite a few more DQs on the breaststroke and the butterfly that we discussed later on. So the biggest thing to remember about the breaststroke is that it's a cycle stroke. So it's arms, legs, arms, legs, arms, legs. You can't do two arms in a row, you can't do 2 legs in a row. Obviously that's not including the actual underwater that you have after the start and after a turn. But arms, legs, arms, legs. So one place that you might see where some swimmers will break that cycle will be at the finish of the race. So at the finish of the race, sometimes if they reach out and they're too far from the wall, they'll kind of continue to coast a little bit, they'll pull their arms back and not kick, and then push their arms forward again. That's a disqualification. They can't do stretch, pull, stretch without kicking in between. So that's probably, most of the time, that's the only time you'll see that potentially broken as far as the stroke is concerned, outside of it being a very, very new swimmer that just is having a hard time learning the stroke itself. So that's one thing that to look out for on the finish itself. It is one of the 2 races where you have to finish with 2-hand touch. So the 2-hand touch, this is one of those things where it becomes important when what you're writing on your heat sheet versus what is on your DQ slip. So there will be, if it's proper, they'll be simultaneous, it'll be both. They can be, as they mentioned, above, at, or below the water, as long as they're simultaneous. They cannot be stacked in any way whatsoever. They both have to touch independently, simultaneously. So this doesn't only happen anymore, but sometimes people will do weird things and try to touch like that. So with the 2-hand touch, the way you judge it is it's non-simultaneous if both of them end up touching. Which most of the time if it's non-simultaneous, or most of the time if they only do one, they'll do the other one following it. Most of the time you won't see a left only. It does happen, a right only. It does happen. If that happens, make sure you're clearly stating that on your heat sheet, because again, if there's a question about that, that'll be something either the HMO or a coach may end up having a question about. So if it's non-simultaneous, right then left, put that on your DQ slip, or L, L, R, whatever that is. So that's about the only time that we encourage you to write something extra on the DQ slip is if it's non-simultaneous touch. On the underwaters, so again on there's the only time you're allowed to do something other than the frog kick or the ice cream scoop that you're supposed to do with the breaststroke is on at the beginning or at the turns. You're allowed the 1 butterfly kick, and you're allowed once to go hands past hip line. You'll see a lot of new swimmers, they'll end up doing this, they'll do this properly, but then they'll just do that. So that's a common disqualification with newer swimmers with breaststroke. So you're only allowed to do the 1 butterfly kick and the 1 hands past hip line on any start or turn for the underwaters. Outside of that, not allowed to do it. Another common, and I'm getting into the slip a lot on some of these, but another common DQ will be the kick on the breaststroke. So it's basically supposed to be a frog kick, and your propulsion is supposed to come from, this is outside of the feet, it's a different part of the foot. Basically, it's an outward motion of the feet. Sometimes the outward motion, and they'll kind of come back together, and there might be a slight little roll. As long as you don't see them pushing, that's not a disqualification. That's not a butterfly kick. Sometimes that's just a natural action of the feet. They kick outside and then come back in, so that's fine. But one thing that you'll see is the scissor kick. That's one thing you'll see with a lot of new swimmers that aren't doing the kick properly. The easiest way to determine a scissor kick is to watch the hips. If they're straight like this, then they're probably at least close to doing it right. If their hips are turned sideways and it looks kind of funny that their feet are kind of doing this like scissors do, again, look at the hips. If the hips are turned sideways and you think it's that's probably what it is a scissor kick. If it looks kind of funny. Obviously, they're not allowed to do a freestyle kick either. Not allowed to do a butterfly kick unless it's in the start or the turn itself. Similar to the backstroke, but the opposite. They have to stay on their breast, face down. They can't be on their back. So again, on the turn, just like on the backstroke, except again the opposite, they have to be towards their breast more when they push off the wall, not their back. If they're more towards their back as they push off the wall, then that's a disqualification. Let's see. Breaststroke. Yep, I think that's right. Again, we don't have anybody trailing, so we're not going to be following that. Oh yes. Something that's difficult to watch during the race is both the hands and the feet. There's a lot going on when they're doing this. A tip is when they're coming towards you, watch their hands. When they're going away from you, watch their feet. It's an easy way to do it. That way you're not having to, kind of run your eyes back and forth really, really quickly. So you will see them, unless it's the 25-yard young ones, you'll see them twice. With the young ones, they're going to be slower, it'll be easier to see them anyway. But again, there's going to be, the water's going to be splashing around. Sometimes it's hard to see. That's okay. So again, coming at you, hands, going away from you, feet. Another thing to mention, so sometimes we have some swimmers that have some sort of a handicap, some sort of infirmity. If they have that, you are only judging what is not part of their handicap. So if they have a problem with their legs of some sort, you're only judging them from the hips up. If they have a problem with their arms, you're only judging them from the hips down. Okay, something to keep in mind because breaststroke's one of those you have to watch for with that specifically. And we have had some swimmers over the years. We do have a swimmer this year, at least one, that will be the case. So something to keep in mind. Any questions? All right.
Alright, so he covered a lot of this, but it's got the same, so it's gonna be number 3 under form. Start, swim, turn, and finish apply to this one as well. And all of the kicks were discussed. Arms, hands past hip line are only allowed off of the turn or off of the start the one time. I don't know how much non-simultaneous arms you would see in breaststroke. That would be kind of weird, but if they're not doing more of a freestyle type thing would be for that. You can't do 2 strokes underwater, and I don't know, some of those are kind of, I don't know if I've ever checked any of them, so I don't know that you would really see them. And then elbows recovering over the water is another one of those I don't know that we've really ever seen, because that would be really difficult to do.
It's freestyle.
Yeah, so, but then the touch, as he was saying, one hand touch would be if only one hand touches, the other hand doesn't touch the wall as well. So you would check that box there. Non-simultaneous is then the only time we tell you to put a note on your actual form, right then left, or left then right. If they only touch with one hand, they'll make that note on your heat sheet what hand they touch with, because that may be something that gets asked. And then just a reminder for the shoulders, you can do the same thing as far as with the backstroke, looking for the shoulder blades, same thing, you're just looking for both shoulder blades now instead of just one. The head does have to break the surface of the water while they're swimming. And then the only stroke that's a cycle stroke, so it does have to be one pull, one kick, one pull, one kick. Other than that, in the miscellaneous, there's not really anything specific. I mean, I guess they could pull on the lane line or spring from the bottom, but then those are obvious.
Okay, sorry, one quick thing as far from a DQ perspective. Again, younger swimmers especially, sometimes their goggles will come off. So if their goggles come off in freestyle, they can stop in the middle of the pool, do whatever they want with their goggles. If they come in backstroke, as long as they're still on their back and they're doing this, that's fine. In breaststroke, they're going to be breaking their cycle. So if they stop in the middle of the pool, or they might go, past vertical. So if they're messing with their goggles, it's going to be a DQ for one of those reasons in that. Similarly, when it comes to butterfly, you could probably do it, but it would be difficult. But again, with the turning in any manner, after they've already touched the wall, if they're at the wall and they do that, completely fine. If they haven't touched the wall yet.
The note of left and right, or right and left, is very important because by the time you get the chance at the end of the season, coaches will absolutely challenge you. So make sure you write down, start right away, right and left and right, because you will get absolutely hammered at the end of the season. Trust me.
So to be clear, as far as the responsibility on that, and we kind of talked about this a little bit at the beginning. So you as the judge will write up the DQ slip. It then comes to an HMO, and the HMO approves it or not, and sends it to the coach. If the coach, so the HMO is for the swimmer when you give them the slip. So if they have a question, they're coming to you, essentially defending the swimmer. After they've already approved it, it goes to the coach, and the coach has a problem with it. If the coach brings it to the HMO, now the HMO is defending the stroke and turn judge. So then at that time, the HMO will then come back to you and maybe ask you for some more of those notes, that kind of a thing. But there should be, at no time should there be any interaction between a judge and a coach, or a judge and a swimmer, or a judge and a parent. It should only be between the judge and the HMO. Okay, so the HMO is there to, like I said, defend the swimmer, defend the stroke and turn judge, depending on the exact time frame in there. So if you have people behind you making comments, whatever, it doesn't happen a ton in summer leagues. Sometimes it does. Essentially ignore them. If you have a swimmer that asks you, "Did I get disqualified?" Talk to your coach, because even if you think they've been disqualified, they might not be. The HMO may throw it out for some reason, or something else may happen. So it's not even official. So you don't really know. You're telling them the truth. Talk to your coach.
Important to remember the golden rule of officiating. The swimmer always gets the benefit of the doubt.
The butterfly stroke has technical rules that apply to the start, the stroke, the turn, and the finish. Let's look at the rules that govern the butterfly.
After the start, the swimmer is allowed one or more leg kicks, but only one arm pull under the water. This pull must bring the swimmer to the surface. As mentioned, a swimmer may kick as many times as they like underwater, as long as the swimmer's head breaks the surface before or at the 15-meter mark. The 15-meter mark should be well marked on the lane lines, so the official can clearly see if the swimmer is submerged longer than 15 meters. From the side of the pool, the stroke judge shall observe that the head breaks the surface of the water before or at the 15-meter mark. This swimmer surfaces well before the 15-meter mark. This swimmer comes to the surface right at the 15-meter mark. In this example, the head breaks the surface beyond the 15-meter mark. This is not legal and requires disqualification.
Both arms must be brought forward over the water and pulled back simultaneously. These swimmers are complying with the rule. This swimmer is not legal because the arms are not moving simultaneously. In the butterfly, the arms must recover over the water. All up and down movements of the legs and feet must be simultaneous. One foot may be higher than the other. If the foot position changes, the official must observe an alternating action for a disqualification. This swimmer is legal. This is an example of observable alternating action and is a violation. A scissors or breaststroke kicking movement is not permitted. From the side of the pool, the best position to observe a butterfly race is slightly behind the slowest swimmer with a clear view of all the assigned lanes.
After the start and at each turn, the swimmer's shoulders must be at or past vertical towards the breast. This swimmer is past vertical towards the back. To determine if the swimmer is past vertical towards the back, the official must observe the relative position of the upper shoulder to the lower shoulder. Sometimes the distortion from the water and the movement of the water can interfere with an observation. When the swimmer leaves the wall, the official should watch the feet leave the wall, and then check to see if the proper body position has been attained. Remember, if you are not completely sure of what you observed, then the swimmer gets the benefit of the doubt. The turn judge at the end of the pool should observe that the swimmer uses the proper stroke into the wall and after the turn, back the other direction. Each backwards pull must be followed by an over-water recovery. Sometimes, a swimmer will miscalculate their distance from the wall and make an underwater recovery to make up the distance. These swimmers are in violation, since their backward pull is followed by an underwater recovery. This is not legal.
The touch shall be made at the turn or finish with both hands simultaneously at, above, or below the water surface. The hands don't have to be on the same plane, but must touch simultaneously. That is, one hand can be above the water and one below, as long as the hands touch at the same time. If the hands do not touch at the same time, this is not legal and will result in a disqualification. Remember, you judge the touch by the hands. After the last pull into the wall, you're not concerned with the position of the shoulders, as long as the swimmer remains at or past vertical toward the breast. Remember, the swimmer is permitted any number of butterfly kicks. The first arm pull brings the swimmer to the surface. The head must break the surface by the 15-meter mark. The arms must recover over the water. Breaststroke or scissors kicks are not permitted. The swimmer may turn in any manner, but the shoulders must be vertical toward the breast when the swimmer leaves the wall. Both hands must touch simultaneously at the turn and the finish.
Couple of things to remember that I'll follow up on this one. Easy. On the start, front start, they dive in, they gotta be on their front, on their breast, right? They can kick, and you'll see this, especially with the older kids. They'll go mad. It'll be crazy, you know, that they're just doing that. And they get one pull while they're underwater, and that pull has to bring them up to the surface. After that, there's usually a rhythm to it. You know, if you watch this enough, or if you're lucky enough to find some underwater shots on Google or something like that, you'll see that. There's a big kick followed by a little one, and it's in here, and it's timed with the arms. But this is not a cyclic, I guess is the word, stroke like Gary's breaststroke is. It doesn't have to have a kick and then a pull, or a pull, then a kick. They can kick all they want, and then they can use their arms. In fact, we've seen this many times where a person will pull, they'll assume their glide position with their arms, and they'll just kick the rest of the way, because their arms are tired. You know, it's hard lifting all that water. Fully legal. Absolutely fully legal. Okay? The only time that it becomes illegal with the arms is if they pull and don't recover. Right? The turn or the finish, two hands, at, above, below, one hand up, one hand down, one hand like this. You'll see high school swimmers, older kids, you know, 16, 17, 18, who have been doing this since they've been 5 years old. They're gonna come in, they're gonna blast in with their left hand, and you're gonna say, that's your left hand, where's your right hand? And you're gonna look, and they're sneaking it in there with just a little tiny touch. Boom! You won't even see it. It's so fast, and the water's boiling, because you know they're making a mess on the surface of the water. The benefit of the doubt goes to the swimmer. It's gotta be that way. Only if you absolutely see space in between. The other thing to remember too on this one is, oh shoot, I just had it in my head. Turn in any manner, as long as when they turn and push back, they're on their breast, okay? And there's one trick that we really haven't mentioned here, but when somebody pushes off the wall, if they are turned like this, and they're still in contact with the wall, they're clearly not on their breast here, right? But they're still in contact with the wall. Their knees are flexed and they're getting ready to push. And then they decide to go all the way over, right? that's okay. Because you look, as soon as their toes clear the wall, as soon as they finish their push off and you can see, I don't know, what is it, water light? You can see daylight in between their toes and the wall. Then you look and you say, yes, they are on their breast. Or, no, I can see other clues that they're very clearly on their back. Okay? So you make your call then, and that's true for all those strokes. Is if they're required to leave on their back or their breast, then as soon as they clear the wall, you watch, you look. Timing is everything on that. It's one of the first things that an HMO will question you on. If you send in a slip that has that listed, and the HMO is going to walk over to you, quite likely, and say, what did you see? And that's how they should say it. It is, hey, what did you see? And you should be able to go look back through your spreadsheet or your heat sheet and say, I saw them push off the wall, there was space, they had clearly left the wall and were proceeding with their stroke, and they were not on their breast, or they were not on their back. Okay, that's all I needed to know. You're positive, you got notes from there, we're out of here. So, at the finish, the stroke, pull, one last thing, arms. The video said what? Arms must go over the water. Right, over the water. Well, what does that really mean? Over the water. Let's talk about what USA Swim defines as your arm. From your shoulder down to your wrist. Because your wrist is definitely a part of your body, as are your hands and your fingers. And they're all referenced in the rule book, okay? So this is your arm. Your arm has to come out of the water, according to what they just said. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you have to fly over it? Oh, your kids can't do that. Most of them, especially 9-year-old girls, they can start doing it. 10-year-olds, pretty good. 11, 12s, it's not a problem. Little guys, 7s and 8s, they can't do that. But you know what? They get their arms to the surface and then they recover, but it's not quite with air underneath. Is there part of their arm that's above the surface? It qualifies then as a legal recovery. All they said was the arm has to be above the surface. So the water line might be right here, or it might be right here. But as long as there's part of their arm that makes it out of the water, done deal. They're good. And we get a lot of that. We see a lot of that. Because, like I said, they're just not beefy enough yet. We don't judge ugly. That's pretty much the bottom line. We judge, did they do it right? Did they fulfill the criteria? And it's up, over, and in simultaneously. Same thing goes with the legs. You saw the one where they had the foot, one foot was higher, fully legal. As long as they keep doing this, they start doing things like this, and one foot is up, and then the left foot is up, and right? All right, Ken, thanks.
Alright, so butterflies number 1, did you drop there? Again, we have start, swim, turn, and finish. We pretty much have gone over all of those pieces. Again, it's not going to be cyclical. You'll see a lot of little kids take a stroke and then kick a bunch, and then take a stroke and then kick a bunch. One thing that's kind of an anomaly for this, the lane line, as terrible as the lane line can be when you hit it with your arm, that can cause a non-simultaneous, which then would need to be called. As far as they hit it and then this arm comes in, so then this one comes after, that would still be disqualified. disqualified for a non-simultaneous. And then the turn, still any manner once you touch with both hands, turn around and push off on your stomach, and you're good to go on that. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, only one violation per slip. And so sometimes, especially on breaststroke and backstroke and little, or maybe backstroke, but breaststroke and butterfly for little kids, you may see 2, 3, 4 things happening all at once. Pick whichever one is the most obvious. Make all of your notes, pick whichever one's the most obvious, and make that the one you turn in. Coach will know that they're not doing it right. So, but whatever is the most egregious, if it's just the one arm touch, or that sort of thing, but it doesn't need to have 15 marks, because the computer person can only put one in. So, don't stress that, just pick the one that is the easiest to call, the most obvious, and go from there. I think that's it. Anything? Okay. Next.
You said one per slip.
Yes.
You do 2 separate slips? No. Alright.
I mean, if you want to, you can.
Yeah, if you got time, go for it.
Yes, but if it's something where it's 7 and 8 butterfly, you probably are DQing more than not.
Yeah.
You make one per.
Because the coach is only to see the one piece. It's,
Right.
It's multiple that might help.
Right. A lot of times what the stroke and turners will do is they'll write it all on their heat sheet, right? They'll turn in right away though to the runner, the worst one that they think, or the easiest one to fill out, right? They'll hand that off. That way you can get in the flow and the coach can do whatever it is that they want to do. And then what the stroke and turn judge does is he just waits, or she just waits until the shift is over, or they get a little break, that kind of thing, and then they go back and look and write up the rest of those DQs from the same kid. And that goes really fast because you just start writing them up. One other little trick with the DQ slips, Kim mentioned that you sign it and then it gets to the HMO signs it, and life is good. Pre-sign a dozen, 20 DQ slips. You'll get them at a meeting just before the meet starts. You'll get your slips and a heat sheet and pencils and pens and stuff. Go through, do 15, 20 of them, and just sign your name and put your number that you get on them. That way you don't have to worry about scribbling your name and putting your number on it.
The individual memory is made up of the 4 strokes in the order of butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, and freestyle. Each of the strokes is governed by the rules prescribed for each individual stroke. The turns when changing from one stroke to another shall conform to the finish rules for the stroke just completed. Let's take a look at those transitions.
When changing from butterfly to backstroke, the swimmer must touch the wall while on the breast, with 2 hands simultaneously at, above, or under the surface of the water. Once a legal touch has been made, the swimmer may turn in any manner, but the shoulders have to be at or past vertical towards the back when the swimmer leaves the wall. The swimmer may execute a brush touch that can be perceived as only touching with one hand if not observed carefully. From the backstroke to the breaststroke, the swimmer must touch while on the back. Once a legal touch has been made, the swimmer can turn in any manner, but the shoulders must be at or past vertical towards the breast when leaving the wall. Breaststroke requires that all arm strokes be in the same horizontal plane without alternating movement. Many elite swimmers use the crossover turn when transitioning from backstroke to breaststroke. The swimmer brings the lead arm directly over the head and makes the touch just before their shoulders get past vertical towards the breast. This is legal, as the swimmer is still past vertical towards the back when they make the touch. When observing the backstroke to breaststroke transition, the judge should focus on the swimmer leaving the wall, and then check to see that the shoulders are past vertical towards the breast. When transitioning from the breaststroke to the freestyle, the swimmer must touch the wall with 2 hands simultaneously, at, above, or under
so not a lot of new things in this one. So this is the individual medley, not the medley relay. We'll talk about that one separately. So the individual medley, it is fly, back, breast, free, in that order. Okay? And each one of those legs is judged as a full race from a stroke and turn judge's perspective. So the fly being the first one, you're judging the fly as if it's a start, a swim, and a finish. Okay? So there are no turns when you're transitioning from one stroke to another. If the length of it requires a turn, like if it's the older kids, or actually no, in the summer we only do the 100 irons. So basically it's just one length of the pool. So when they start in summer, it's a start of a fly, it's a swim of a fly, it's a finish of a fly, followed by the start of a backstroke, the swim of a backstroke, the finish of a backstroke, very important, then the start of the breaststroke, swim, finish of the breaststroke, and then the freestyle. Okay, so again, you're essentially judging 4 races within an IM. So, harder to zoom in on that one when we're talking about the DQ slip. But remember, so you have 4 individual strokes that you are judging on this one. So on the fly, all the same stuff we talked about earlier. 2-hand touch at the end of the fly. 2-hand touch, simultaneous, above, below, all that stuff. Then when you're transitioning to the backstroke, when they leave the wall, it's the start, so they have to be leaving the wall on their back, right? And then everything while they're on their back. When they get to the other end, they're finishing on their back as if it's a backstroke leg all by itself. So they have to touch on their back. It is not a turn. That's one of the mistakes, especially the newer swimmers will make, is they'll think it's a backstroke turn, so they'll flip. They can't flip if they have not touched the wall yet. So as I mentioned there's something called a crossover turn, or a Texas turn, or a bucket turn. Lots of different names for it. As long as they have reached back and touched while on their back, they can turn in any manner, just like in a regular backstroke. So you will see the older swimmers, or the more experienced swimmers, will use that, because more often than not, it is faster. Some have found, at least for them individually, it's not faster. We actually have one who used to be on our team that his year-round coach told him that the bucket turn's not faster for you, don't do it. So that's the only instance I've ever heard of. But, so again, 4 individual strokes, okay, that you're judging individually. And then the key is, on the 4th leg, it's the freestyle. So slight difference between that freestyle leg and an individual freestyle is that you can do anything except for any of the previous 3 strokes. In the freestyle, like Craig was saying earlier, the individual freestyle, you can swim a fly if you want. You can swim a breaststroke if you want. You can swim a backstroke as long as you start on your front. But in the final leg, they couldn't swim a fly if they wanted to, because they've already swum the fly. They can't swim a breaststroke because they've already done it. They can't swim anything that they've already swum. So they could do the circle swim, like Craig was talking about earlier. They could do that whole little tornado thing. They could do whatever they want, doggy paddle, but they cannot do those other 3 strokes. Okay? Let's see. Am I missing something on that? I don't think so. So, doing the slip. Question?
Alright, so on this one, it looks nice and simple, and then you look at number 5. That first little box though is the swim, stroke, and fraction number. So that's when you're seeing number 1 is butterfly, 2 is back, 3 is breaststroke, 4 is freestyle. You would put the number there, and then continue to fill it out just as if you would if you were watching that individual race. And then obviously that second one would be if for some reason they got confused and they swam out of order, then you would mark that box. But otherwise, just to reiterate, to start, to swim, and to finish of each stroke. And so, other than number 5, then telling you where to go, there's not really anything different. It's the pointers. So.
There's actually one thing that I meant to mention, and this actually applies to all of the swims, and that's going back to where you should be standing as a stroke and turn official. You should be at the edge of the pool. You should be there so you can see the touch on the wall. You should be there so that you can see the turn on the wall, whether they're leaving on their back or on their breast. So if you're standing behind the timers, that's not where you should be standing. because you can't, again, fairly judge unless you are right there over the edge of the water. If you're not getting wet, then you're not doing it right. You will get wet, whether it's a strong swimmer, big splash, swimmers that aren't as experienced. But again, you need to be there in order to judge fairly, right on the edge of the pool.
The relays are the ultimate display of teamwork towards a common goal in swimming competition. The team of officials at every swim meet rely on the same continuity to execute their responsibilities to oversee the conduct of a fair meet.
There are two types of relays. The freestyle relays, where each of the legs of the race are conducted under the rules of freestyle. The other is the medley relay, which is raced in the order of backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, and finally freestyle. In the medley relay, the rules of each of the different strokes are applied. At the end of each leg, the finish rule for each stroke applies in each case. In addition to these rules, the officials are responsible for judging the relay takeoffs. The key to relay takeoffs is to watch the feet of the swimmer on the block. When the feet of the swimmer on the block loses contact with the starting platform, look down to see if the incoming swimmer has touched the wall. If the swimmer has not touched yet, then the takeoff is early, and that is a violation. This swimmer takes off too early, and the team should be disqualified. In the freestyle relay, the medley order can be swum. The observation techniques are the same as for the individual freestyle race.
Watch the feet of the swimmer performing the takeoff. When both feet lose contact with the starting block, look down to see if the incoming swimmer has touched. If the swimmer has not touched, it is a violation. Remember, if there is any question about what you have observed, then the benefit of the doubt goes to the swimmer.
There's nothing really special. It's just 4 separate events: backstroke, the breaststroke, BB, fly, and freestyle. Done. And all the rules that apply to all of each one of those strokes apply in the relay. The biggest key is that you may at some point be asked to participate in and be one of the observers for early takeoffs. Early takeoffs are easy. You basically do exactly what they said. You try to watch all 6 lanes, okay? And then you see when people take off, look down, good, look down, look down, look down, okay, we're good for that one. Then you wait for the next one to come in. Nothing too much.
So relay is just pretty similar to the medley. The individual medley, as far as you're going to direct to whatever stroke it is that the infraction took place. Something with relays and swimmers, don't write the swimmer's name, just write the number of the swimmer in the relay, because that can change and that's fine. So it may not match the heat sheet. That kid may swim a different stroke, that kid may not even be in the relay. But whatever stroke and swimmer number that was is what you would mark there. So don't worry about filling out their name, just the team name and then the swimmer number. Then if for some reason they swim the strokes out of order, you would mark that one. And not enough swimmers, you just can't have one person swim twice, I would think. So you would think that would make sense and be a disadvantage and nobody would care about that. So that would be the mark for that. Anything else?
Anyway, so thank you to our stroke and turn trainers. They did an amazing job. I have information about the background checks really quickly. If you are on the board, if you're a coach over 18, if you're a stroke and turn HMO starter, you need to do the background check. I will send this link out to everybody. It's free. The league covers it. It just takes you like 2 minutes, and then I get the report. I will then send that report to your team rep, and they will make your badges up, and that's that badge number that you put on your stroke and turn slip there. It will be on your badge. So I will make sure to get that information out to you. Make sure that you just signed in, and you will have all that information. Thank you guys for coming. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to stay back behind. Otherwise, you're free to go. But thank you again for attending tonight. Appreciate your time.